Eric Schmitt, who also is a former Missouri Attorney General. So, Senator Schmitt, welcome back as always, sir. I'm trying to figure out, so the Supreme Court said what? That the razor wire should come down, but now there's a second debate about what constitutes an invasion. Help me out on this as a senator, but also as a former AG who was a legal beagle.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that the free state of Missouri stands with Texas.
Right.
Texas is well within their rights, actually, to continue to put up razor wire. What the Supreme Court said essentially was that they were lifting the injunction that prohibited Border Patrol from cutting down the razor wire. So technically, if they wanted to, they could go and try and cut down the existing razor wire. But there's nothing in that opinion that prevents Texas from continuing to enforce its laws and perhaps even put up more razor wire. Which, by the way, I should point out in a week like this, it's worth pointing out what a waste of resources that would be to actually enforce our border wall. On the Armed Services Committee, we had a hearing this week. Joe Biden actually spent last year, he was spending $140,000 a day to not construct the wall, the materials that had already been purchased, then sold off, in one example, Larry, over $4 million worth of materials for just a little over $100,000. And so this is part and parcel of Joe Biden's complete abandonment of our southern border. So I applaud Texas for standing up, actually trying to secure their border. We have a porous open border that's streaming fentanyl and drugs into our communities. And so, look, Texas is well within their rights, again, to continue to defend their border. The only thing the Supreme Court said in the meantime is that the Border Patrol agents could cut the razor wire down if they choose to, but we'll see if that actually happens.
Well, apparently, according to Griff Jenkins and other sources, and there's no better reporter on the border than Griff Jenkins, to be honest with you, the border agents are not going to try to cut down any of this wire. They're just going to work. They have great relations with the Texas National Guard. Let me just give you a quick quote from Governor Kristi Noem out in South Dakota about this whole story. Take a listen, please.
This is about our Constitution. This is about us standing united. The 13 original colonies would have never signed the Constitution or ratified it if they didn't know that they didn't have the protections to defend themselves. Right now, I'm so proud of what Texas is doing to defend itself. We'll be right there beside them. We'll do everything we can to make sure this invasion stops.
I mean, really, with Governor Noem and others, these states, all the states, have a right to protect their citizens. They have a right to stop an invasion. Okay, and many people, including former President Trump, has called this an invasion. Now, does that hold legal water in your judgment?
Well, yes, but they still need to get to this issue. So again, going back to that Supreme Court decision, that was just on a temporary basis. They're still going to have a trial on the merits of these important issues. So from a legal perspective, you know, this is going to continue on, and I think that's an important point. But in the meantime, all they said is that they could cut down the razor wire if they wanted to. It sounds like law enforcement's pretty united here in that they believe they should actually enforce the laws of the land. The problem is you have a president and a chief executive that's not interested in executing the laws. And this is the issue here, is that the states did come together to give the federal government some limited powers. That's what our Constitution's about. One of them happens to be to provide for the national defense, to secure our southern border. So what happens when you have a president who's completely abandoned that issue and that duty and that promise to the American people? Well, you see that playing out now. So it's been a total disaster from day one from this administration at the southern border, and now you see it playing out. This is the logical consequence, Larry, of when you have the open borders crowd who used to write white papers about this stuff suddenly in charge of the United States of America. It runs, you know, you get these sorts of problems. And so I support Texas and what they're doing. And again, I think this case is going to continue to play out.
And then back to Washington, wonderful Washington. President Joe Biden says it's okay to have 5,000 illegals a day come into the country. We'll give them all green cards, we'll give them all work permits. They can fly in airplanes without ID cards. Next thing you know, they'll be voting. And apparently that deal is dead in the water. Do I have that right?
I hope so, Larry. I think that Republicans, you know, who in good faith were you know, trying to talk to some folks about this, are coming to the realization that this administration has no desire whatsoever to actually secure our southern border. So let's just kind of do a tail of the tape here. On day one, they eliminated Remain in Mexico. When I was AG, we fought that, kept it in place for a while, but ultimately went away. That was a very effective tool of making Mexico the waiting room. They eliminated Title 42. They got rid of Operation Talon, which meant to expel previously convicted violent offenders. Think about that. You think that's something that could unite us? No, the Biden administration reversed that because President Trump had done it. They reversed the policy on the border wall, and as I mentioned, we're paying $140,000 a day to not construct the border wall. And perhaps the biggest abuse we see is the parole authority that the president has. These are supposed to be individualized adjudications for people who make the case, not mass illegal immigration, not categorical entries because you're from a certain classification or country. That's what's happening. That's accounted for millions of people. So we have over 9 million people here illegally. The blame lies solely at Joe Biden's feet. He could secure the border today with existing authority if he wanted to. President Trump did it with existing law. Joe Biden doesn't want to enforce the law. And when President Trump gets back into office, he doesn't need any policy changes to enforce the law. I promise you, when he gets in, he's going to secure the southern border. So I think that unfortunately the Democrats now are trying to place blame somehow on President Trump and Republicans when they're not serious about this. They're the parties of open borders, and they want to just sort of lead to a pathway to amnesty.
All right. Senator Eric Schmitt, as always, thank you very much. Appreciate it, sir. See you soon.
Take care, Larry.
All right.